My pregnant stepmom accused me of pushing her and had me thrown out of the house. Now, something bad has happened, and my father wants me back. I, 22F, have been living with my father, 55M, and stepmother, 38F, for the past 5 years, ever since my mom passed away when I was 17. The transition wasn't easy, but I tried my best to adapt to our new family dynamic. However, my relationship with my stepmother, Linda, has been strained from the beginning. When Linda first moved in, I made efforts to welcome her. I helped her unpack, showed her around the house, and even offered to cook dinner for the 3 of us. But it quickly became apparent that Linda wasn't interested in forming a bond with me. She would barely acknowledge my presence, often speaking to my father as if I wasn't in the room. As weeks turned into months, Linda's attitude towards me grew increasingly unpleasant. She would complain to my father about minor things, like how I loaded the dishwasher or the way I folded laundry. At first, I thought she was just particular about housework, so I tried harder to meet her standards. But no matter what I did, it was never good enough. Linda started making comments about how I was too old to be living at home. She'd say things like, "Don't you think it's time Sarah started looking for her own place?" Or, "I can't wait until we have the house to ourselves." My father would usually change the subject, avoiding conflict, but his silence hurt almost as much as Linda's words. I got a part-time job at a local bookstore to contribute to household expenses, hoping it would ease some of the tension. But Linda just used it as another opportunity to criticize me, saying I wasn't working enough hours or that I should be pursuing a real career instead of playing shop. The situation worsened when Linda announced her pregnancy 6 months ago. She was ecstatic, and my father was over the moon. I tried to share in their joy, but Linda made it clear that I wasn't part of this new chapter in their lives. She'd rub her belly and say things like, "Finally, we'll have a real family," or, "I can't wait for your father to have a child of his own." Her comments stung, especially because I knew how much my father loved me, but he never contradicted her, and I started to doubt my place in the family. Linda began treating me like an outsider in my own home. She'd have long conversations with my father about the baby, but whenever I tried to join in, she'd suddenly remember a chore that needed doing or a phone call she had to make. One day, about a month into her pregnancy, I overheard Linda on the phone with her sister. She didn't know I was home, and I heard her say, "I'm working on getting rid of Sarah before the baby comes. This house isn't big enough for both of them, and I want to turn her room into a nursery. Besides, it's not fair for our child to have to compete with her for inheritance." I was shocked and hurt. I hadn't even thought about inheritance. I just wanted to be part of the family. I considered telling my father what I'd heard, but I was afraid he wouldn't believe me. Linda had been slowly poisoning him against me, and I didn't want to risk pushing him further away. As Linda's pregnancy progressed, she became more overt in her attempts to drive a wedge between my father and me. She'd forget to tell me about family dinners, so I'd come home to find them already eating. She'd plan outings for just the 2 of them on days she knew I was free, then act surprised when I mentioned I could have joined. My father seemed oblivious to what was happening. Whenever I tried to talk to him about how I was feeling, he'd brush it off, saying I was imagining things, or that I needed to try harder to get along with Linda. It felt like I was losing him, bit by bit. Last week, Linda's family organized a baby shower at our house. I offered to help with the preparations, but Linda insisted she and her sisters had everything under control. On the day of the party, I felt like a stranger in my own home. Linda's family and friends filled the house, cooing over her belly and exchanging knowing looks when I walked by. I tried to stay out of the way, spending most of the time in the kitchen. I was fixing myself a sandwich when I heard a commotion from the living room. Curious, I stepped out to see what was happening. The scene that greeted me was chaos. Linda was on the floor, clutching her stomach and sobbing. Her sister was kneeling beside her, glaring at me with pure hatred. Before I could ask what had happened, Linda pointed at me and wailed, "She pushed me! Sarah pushed me!" I was stunned. I hadn't even been in the room, let alone anywhere near Linda. But before I could defend myself, everyone started shouting. Linda's family surrounded her, some helping her up, others advancing towards me with clenched fists. My father pushed through the crowd, his face a mask of fury I had never seen before. "What did you do?" he demanded, his voice shaking with anger. "How could you, Sarah? How could you hurt Linda and the baby?" I tried to explain that I had been in the kitchen, that I hadn't touched Linda, but no one was listening. Linda's sisters were calling me names: monster, psychopath, jealous brat. Someone suggested calling the police. Through it all, Linda kept sobbing, playing the victim perfectly. In the midst of the chaos, my father made a decision that shattered my world. He turned to me, his eyes cold, and said, "Pack a bag. You're going to stay with Aunt Marie until we sort this out. I can't have you here if you're a danger to Linda and the baby." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Dad, please," I begged. "I didn't do anything. You have to believe me." But he wouldn't listen. He just shook his head and walked away, leaving me standing alone in a room full of hostile strangers. With tears streaming down my face, I went to my room and threw some clothes into a backpack. As I was leaving, I heard Linda's sister say, "Good riddance. She should have been gone long ago." Linda, miraculously recovered from her ordeal, was sitting on the couch, a satisfied smile on her face as she watched me walk out the door. I've been at my Aunt Marie's house for a week now. My father hasn't called once. When I try to reach out to him, he responds with short, cold messages, saying he needs time to think and that he's disappointed in me. Linda's family has been spreading the story on social media, painting me as a violent, jealous stepdaughter who tried to harm an innocent pregnant woman. I feel lost and alone. I know I didn't push Linda, but I have no way to prove it. No one saw what actually happened, or rather, what didn't happen. It's my word against hers, and she has a whole support system backing her up. I'm afraid this lie will permanently destroy my relationship with my father, and that I'll lose my home and my family forever. I've spent hours trying to understand why Linda would lie like this. The only explanation I can come up with is that she's finally found the perfect way to get rid of me. She's always wanted me out of the house, and now she has an excuse that no one will question. Who would doubt a pregnant woman claiming she was assaulted? I'm torn about what to do next. Part of me wants to fight back, to clear my name and expose Linda's lies. But another part wonders if it's even worth the effort. If my father can so easily believe I would do something so horrible, maybe our relationship wasn't as strong as I thought. Maybe I've already lost him. I find myself thinking about my mom a lot lately. I wonder what she would say if she could see what's happening. Would she be disappointed in me? Would she believe Linda's story? Or would she be the one person who stood by my side and fought for the truth? I miss her more than ever now. I've considered reaching out to some of the guests who were at the party to see if anyone noticed anything that could help prove my innocence. But I'm afraid of making the situation worse if Linda finds out I'm investigating. Plus, most of the guests were her friends and family. They're more likely to back up her story than help me. My Aunt Marie has been kind, offering me a place to stay and a sympathetic ear. But I can tell she's conflicted. She wants to believe me, but she also can't fathom why Linda would lie about something so serious. It's frustrating to have no one fully in my corner, to constantly feel like I have to defend my innocence. I've thought about giving up and moving out on my own, starting fresh somewhere new, where no one knows me or this awful story. But the idea of leaving behind everything and everyone I know is terrifying. I'm not sure I'm ready to be completely on my own. Plus, I worry that if I leave now, it will look like I'm admitting guilt. The hardest part of all this is feeling like I've lost my father. We used to be so close, especially after my mom died. He was my rock, the one person I could always count on. Now he can barely look at me. I keep replaying all the moments over the past few years when I could have said something about Linda's behavior, wondering if things would be different if I had spoken up sooner. I'm also worried about the baby, my future half-sibling. Will I ever get to meet them? Will Linda poison them against me before they're even born? The thought of having a sibling out there who I'll never know breaks my heart. I had always hoped that even if Linda and I never got along, I could at least be a good big sister. The stress of the situation is taking a toll on my health. I've been having trouble sleeping, plagued by nightmares where I'm falling and my father turns away, refusing to catch me. I've lost my appetite, and Aunt Marie keeps trying to get me to eat, worried about how thin I'm getting. But everything tastes like ashes, and my stomach is in constant knots. I feel like I'm living in a nightmare that I can't wake up from. One moment I'm angry, wanting to storm back to the house and confront Linda. The next, I'm consumed by sadness, missing my dad and the life I had. Then I'll feel a wave of fear, wondering if this is going to follow me forever, if I'll always be known as the girl who attacked her pregnant stepmother. So, Reddit? Aida? Should I have done something differently? How can I prove my innocence when there's no evidence either way? Is there any hope of salvaging my relationship with my father, or should I just accept that Linda has won and try to move on with my life? I never thought I'd be in a situation like this. I always tried to be a good daughter to make my father proud. Now I feel like I've lost everything, and I don't know how to get it back. Any advice would be appreciated. I'm lost and scared, and I don't know where to turn. Thank you for reading this far. Writing it all out has helped a little, even if it doesn't change anything. I hope someone out there understands and believes me. I could really use some support right now. Update. It's been a month since I was accused of pushing my pregnant stepmother. A lot has changed. For the past month, I've been staying at my Aunt Marie's house. Life has been quiet here, but I've felt like I was in limbo. I couldn't move forward with my life, but I also couldn't go back to how things were. My father still wasn't talking to me, and I had no idea what was happening at home. I tried to keep busy. I helped Aunt Marie around the house, picked up some extra shifts at the bookstore, and even started looking into online classes. But everything felt temporary, like I was just going through the motions. One evening, about a month after I'd been sent away, Aunt Marie came into my room with a strange look on her face. She sat down on the bed next to me and took my hand. I could tell something was wrong. Aunt Marie told me that my father had called. At first, my heart leapt. Was he finally ready to listen to me? But then I saw the sadness in my aunt's eyes, and I knew this wasn't going to be a happy conversation. She explained that my father wanted me to pack my bags. He was coming to pick me up the next day. He had also said he was sorry, but Aunt Marie didn't know what exactly he was apologizing for. Then came the shocking news. Linda had slipped on the stairs at home and had a miscarriage. My first reaction was disbelief, followed quickly by fear. I was afraid I would somehow be blamed for this too, even though I hadn't been anywhere near the house. I spent that night tossing and turning, unable to sleep. Part of me was relieved that I might finally be able to go home and clear my name. But another part was terrified of what I might be walking into. The next morning, I packed my bags with shaking hands. Aunt Marie tried to reassure me, but I could tell she was worried too. We waited in tense silence for my father to arrive. When I heard the car pull up, my heart started racing. I watched from the window as my father got out of the car. He looked tired and older than I remembered. When he rang the doorbell, I hung back, letting Aunt Marie answer it. I heard them talking quietly in the hallway for a few minutes before my father came into the living room where I was waiting. When he saw me, his face crumpled. To my shock, he rushed forward and pulled me into a tight hug. My father apologized over and over. He told me he was so sorry for not believing me, for sending me away, for letting things get so bad. At first, I was too stunned to react. Then, slowly, I hugged him back, feeling tears start to fall. When we finally pulled apart, my father explained what had happened. After Linda's accident and miscarriage, she had been devastated. In her grief, she had confessed to my father that she had lied about me pushing her at the baby shower. She told him that she had made up the whole thing because she wanted me out of the house. Linda admitted that she had been jealous of my relationship with my father. She felt like an outsider in our family and thought that if I were gone, she would finally have my father's full attention. But after losing the baby, she realized how wrong she had been. She told my father that she felt like she was being punished for hurting an innocent person. I listened to all of this in a shock. Finally, the truth was out. But another part of me felt sad for Linda. I knew how much she had wanted that baby, and despite everything she had done, I wouldn't wish that loss on anyone. My father asked if I would be willing to come home. He promised that things would be different, that he would listen to me and stand up for me. He said Linda wanted to apologize in person and try to make amends. I was hesitant at first. The last month had been hard, and I wasn't sure if I could trust Linda again, but I missed my home and my dad. After talking it over with Aunt Marie, I decided to give it a try. The car ride home was quiet. My father tried to make small talk, but I could tell he was nervous. When we pulled up to the house, I felt a knot in my stomach. This place that had once been my safe haven now felt foreign and a little scary. Linda was waiting for us in the living room. She looked pale and thin, with dark circles under her eyes. When she saw me, she burst into tears. She apologized over and over, telling me how sorry she was for lying and for trying to come between my father and me. I didn't know how to react at first. Part of me wanted to yell at her, to tell her how much she had hurt me. But seeing her so broken down, I couldn't bring myself to add to her pain. I told her I accepted her apology, but that it would take time for me to trust her again. Over the next few weeks, we all worked on rebuilding our relationships. My father made a real effort to spend time with me, to listen to my concerns and stand up for me when needed. Linda and I started having weekly coffee dates where we would talk honestly about our feelings and fears. It wasn't easy, and there were plenty of awkward moments and setbacks. But slowly, things started to improve. Linda began to open up about her own insecurities and her grief over losing the baby. I found myself feeling sympathy for her, understanding a little better why she had acted the way she did. As for me, I started to feel more secure in my place in the family. My father reassured me repeatedly that I was his daughter, and that nothing would ever change that. He even started talking about setting up a college fund for me, something Linda surprisingly supported. Now, 3 months after that terrible day at the baby shower, things are better than they've been in years. Our house feels like a home again. Linda and I aren't best friends, but we've developed a mutual respect. My father is more present and involved than ever. I know we still have a long way to go. Trust, once broken, takes a long time to rebuild. But I'm hopeful for our future as a family. This experience has taught me the importance of communication, forgiveness, and standing up for the truth. To everyone who supported me during that difficult time, thank you. Your kindness and advice helped me get through some of the darkest days of my life. And to those who are going through similar family struggles, don't give up hope. Sometimes, even in the most unlikely circumstances, healing is possible.